Welcome back to the Civ Battle Royale! My name is Dawkinzz, and let's get right into part 97, the destruction of falling stars. Welcome back to the Civilization Battle Royale part 97. We're nearly at the 100th episode mark, and the competition is fiercer than ever. Here we have some wishful thinking for Mongolia's future, courtesy of user GRG904. Someday, just maybe, Genghis will have his day. Here's user Spherical Melon city map, impressive as always. Take a good look, cause this city map might change soon enough. And the tile accurate map as well, provided by user Der Erlingkonig. Spot your favorite border gore, cause there's plenty of it. Mine's the Swedish tile south of Gaza. And finally, the PR slide. You guessed it, the Boers are still in first place. They've made some pretty impressive gains against the Vietnamese, and they're spotting Porto, which seems to be the most populated city on the cylinder. Good job, maybe there's a cybernetic Maria just crawling around somewhere. We open today with a shot of the Siberian-Swedish conflict, where Sibir has claimed Antioch on the Black Sea, while Sweden has flipped Moscow. This front is full of city flips, but Sibir definitely has the upper hand at the moment. The Swedish military looks pretty thin on the ground. Here's the Indus River Valley, the current front in the Boer-Vietnamese War. Eagle-eyed viewers pointed out last part what is highlighted in this slide, the destruction of Lashkar-Gah, joining the list of cities in this area nuked off the map. See also Tarsus, Susa, Herat, and Isfahan. Vietnamese forces have assembled near Mazar-e-Sharif, wary of the Boer reinforcements en route from Gordium. What was once a cradle of life is now nothing more than a no-man's land. On the other Vietnamese war front against Australia, things haven't changed much. Aussie forces have Thi Lai Bi Nai the science guy at the moment, but most coastal cities down here are flipping regularly. Incense are banned at the UN over Boer objections. Meanwhile, this part of the Pacific is relatively quiet, with most of Australia's units having been sent to the front. Also visible is Crowfoot making good decisions in building naval melee units, with 2 on the slide compared to Australia's 0. Australia's Chinese beachhead has a serious supply of units, primarily bio-drones. Cities on both sides of this war are frequently bombed into the black, making city flips a constant inevitability. What was once a war front a few parts ago between Vietnam and Sibir is now relatively quiet, besides the radioactivity on the mountaintops. Apparently the major powers are feeling merciful these days and are letting badly out-of-date Armenian units leak into their territory. It's probably because Sibir is busy elsewhere flipping Nakia, at the edge of the Eastern European citadel pileup. It'll definitely flip back, but the technological discrepancy between the combatants is on full display here. Sweden's only able to supply organic infantry at best, with even weaker mutants filling in the gaps. Sibir, on the other hand, is sending mostly robot infantry and biotroopers, which are endgame units. On the other end of the front, Jyväskylä North and Stalingrad seem secure as Kuchum's troops aim for Linkoping. Tampere falls as Sibir pushes further and further. Note the horde of Siberian workers trailing behind the front, cleaning up pillaged improvements. Evidently, Kuchum wants these cities online and productive ASAP. Vietnam is struggling on their main front against Australia, but that doesn't mean the Trung sisters can't still hit parks where it hurts. Their Indian Ocean Navy has let them nuke the Australian cities of Mawanjam and Kajina. I've never had to pronounce these before, thanks for bearing with me, which is mostly symbolic. Notably, the Outback looks much thinner on units than it has in a long time, showing the toll their war of attrition is taking on them. The Vietnamese army group that massed near Mazar-e-Sharif has failed to hold the city and is instead trying to stall the Boers along the Indus near the ruins of Lashkar-Gah. Sri Lanka continues to exist, sitting there, looking cute. Here's a view of the nearly empty core of Sweden. Those cyber subs won't help you defend against a land invasion, Gustavus. Bonus, spot the Inuit unit. It's like a Where's Waldo, but with a dangerous ice zombie. A rare shot of Iceland's home island reveals the influence of big carrier on the nation's navy. At least there's a couple of advanced destroyers, but not that many. In fact, I think the Blackfoot have more melee naval units. Still, this North Atlantic garbage patch makes the idea of anyone reaching Reykjavik infeasible. Apparently, Pedro has decided to take Carnival on tour this year as Brazilian units overflow into Icelandic and Boer-held Iberia. But it's not just Europe. By the way, take a look at Porto. That's good. In fact, the Brazilian military has spilled well into Orange Africa as far as Old Congo. It's not just a handful of units either, but a rather substantial force. Our spies have given us a report about the pirate haven of Port-au-Prince, apparently attempting to build a hotel and rebrand itself as a resort for Inuit and Blackfoot tourists. The reviews, however, are less than impressive. "The whole place stinks of rum," wrote one disappointed visitor. I don't know what's disappointing about that. Kandahar, on the other hand, has been flipped between Vietnam and the Boers down to 3 population. That's a couple of 100,000, if not millions, of civilians lost. The few survivors are apparently trying to set up a marketplace in the basement of a damaged Kremlin. The Brazilian carpet in its natural habitat, demonstrating that South America is indeed 100% full at maximum capacity, hence the overflow overseas. While the number of units is somewhat inflated by out-of-date paratroopers, there's also substantial numbers of endgame tier units. Clearly, Pedro wants to be taken seriously as a military power, and based on these slides alone, I think he should be taken seriously. The Bucks are hard at work trying to carpet to match the Brazilian brethren below, although the shortage of land tiles in the Caribbean means their carpet is mostly naval. Though there's still more carriers than are useful, Morgan's diversified his navy, at least a little bit. These poor settlers aren't likely to find anywhere to settle, though. The Brazilian carpet's not just leaking to the Old World, but also the Inuit North America. The Inuit are apparently struggling to make room for their own units, contending with overflow from both Brazil and the Blackfoot. It's so crowded that Brazil's leaking troops as far north as the Hudson Bay. This is bad news for everybody. If Brazil keeps continuing like this, the whole world is just going to be green without any city captures. Other nations are not going to be able to produce units, meaning that if war were declared, Brazil would just be able to swarm over everybody. Are Brazil the new Zerg? Icelandic-occupied Germany looks pretty barren. Ingolfer ought to be careful not to let this capital-filled territory become an easy target. Boer North Africa is full of optimized tiles, but it's nearly empty of units, other than workers in Old Carthage and Brazilian vacationers, that is. Vietnam flips Tianjin, although it's not likely to last. Every city here looks liable to be flipped a few dozen more times. This Vietnamese fleet won't be able to do much but harass the ex-Kimberley homeland. What do they have against them? But the sentiment is there. Rubibi, once Jandamar's capital, appears to have taken a nuke. Kanaohe, beautiful, serene, and peaceful. If you can handle the crowds, it's a lovely vacation spot. Kamehameha would rather stay out of the spotlight for his own safety, so let's move on to the next slide. And this slide, as it turns out, is the stuff of nightmares for Vietnam fans. Hanoi's in the red with embarked Aussie melee units in range. Also, despite the heavy bombing runs and border gore, the city still has a population of 46, which is close to the world's largest at the moment. If it were to flip, millions would die. The Vietnamese troops in the Indus Valley have fallen back to Gar. Kandahar is barely being defended, and the flow of Boer troops shows no sign of slowing down. Nike is Swedish at the moment, but Siberian reinforcements are coming through Gothenburg to flip it. Vasa also looks quite vulnerable. There's a whole lot going on. This is scary, guys. Up to the north, it seems Gustavus has thrown every possible unit at the Tampere-Linköping front as possible. It seems to be holding the line, at least for the moment. Also on the slide, look at numbers fielded by the Swedish Air Force. Northern Sibir, a bit east from the front, shows Kutchub's army of workers en route. There's also a new little settlement, Surgut. In settling, it's all the rage these days. Vasa flips, and Minsk and Nakia are extremely open targets. Sweden may be holding out at the northern end of the front, but further south it's a lot less stable. The Swedish organic infantry are assembling in Old Poland, and Sibir's troops down here seem a tad short-handed. Also, Boer carrier party in the Black Sea. A nearly dead Boer biotrooper pounds on the gates of Gar. Vietnam only has a handful of units on this front, and they're not going to do much damage to slow the Orange onslaught. Kandahar has fallen, handing the Kremlin and Taj Mahal to the Boers. Here's where those Vietnam fans breathe a sigh of relief that the capital has not fallen, yet. Nor are there any Australian units in range of doing so at the moment, yet. The danger is far from over, though. Still, the Trungs are forcing a battalion through to reclaim Vijay. Blackfoot peacekeepers leaking from the long-held exclave on Olongapo are starting to fill Australia's East Indies. Is this going to interfere with Park's strategy? Icelandic St. Louis on Nova Scotia, probably much nicer than actual St. Louis, which in my opinion can be skipped entirely. Just look at all of those specialist slots. That's what Future Worlds is all about. Korean-held Shanghai may not be growing, but it too has substantial infrastructure in place. It's pretty impressive what Future Worlds lets one do with a city that has very few workable tiles. Vasa and Tampere flip to Sweden while Sibir settles Långjärnlinjen right on the battlefield. It's immediately bombed into the black by Sweden's air force, but it isn't at risk of flipping at the moment. That's a great way to come into the world. You just burst into existence and then get shot. Vijay is back in Vietnamese hands, as is Thi Lai Bi Nai, the science guy. I'll keep making that joke. As more Vietnamese troops approach Panduranga, it's possible that the whole Cham coast may end up in the Trung's hands soon enough. It seems like Park sent all his embarked units to China instead, which is probably for the best, because you just, sweep around. Good job. The Kimberley Antarctic Holdings. With Hanoi taking a bit of a beating, Wollongara might be our number 2 for population, after Porto, of course. If you don't mind absurdly overcrowded islands, snow, and foreign powers sailing ships carrying nuclear weapons through your waters, it's not a bad place to live. Looks like Vietnam nuked Middelburg, a Boer city they briefly flipped a long while ago. But what's that I see in the corner? That's right, friends. Sibir and Sweden have made peace, and just as Gustavus seemed to have rallied a more substantial army to the front too. Kuchum conceivably could have pushed for more, but I can see why he would stop where he did. He gained a capital and a solid vertical stripe of land from Jyväskylä north to Jyväskylä south. That's how you actually pronounce it, guys. The barren Swedish core, with substantial but non-crippling losses to both Iceland and Sibir. Sweden will have to quickly tech up and rebuild if it wants to stay relevant. Kuchum's worker crews are already hard at work cleaning up his new holdings. Sibir needs these cities online as soon as possible if he wants to remain competitive with the frontrunners. Peace in Europe means little down here in India. Gar has flipped and the Vietnamese defenders have seemingly surrendered it and retreated to Agra. Panduranga is Vietnamese once again. Kimberley and Blackfoot units immediately start to fill the space. The forces near Dong Hoi, Saigon, and Than Hao seem closer to evenly matched than they have in a while. And now the end. I'm just kidding. Sweden's still receiving 500 plus GPT from Exclavia, which is probably propping up their economy. Kekkonen will only owe it for a few more turns, however. Middelburg is re-nuked. This won't have much practical effect on the Boers, but it's a big middle finger to Kruger, courtesy of the Trungs. Gar's last garrison is still in place, but it's not likely to live much longer. Agra's garrison is also depleted, both by casualties and partial retreat to Fujian. I have a hunch Ekanik is planning not to renew his open border treaties. His own troops aren't able to fill his lands with so many others in the way. At least he finally annexed Charlottetown. Blackfoot troops are trying to fill Borneo to peacefully protest Park's invasion, but it's not doing much. Vietnam's embarked biotrooper is unlikely to ever make it to the island. Tianjin's in Aussie hands, and a substantial force of drone fighters out of Rokjia Air Base are assaulting the Vietnamese forces. I think Australia is short on aluminum and nanomaterials, judging from their terribly out-of-date artillery. Agra has fallen. The city, once the Mughal capital, is another crucial prize for Kruger's Orange Empire. Fujian has either been nuked or flipped, or maybe both. Agra falling is pretty bad for everybody else on the cylinder, because it gives the Boers the prize of the Statue of Liberty. That means they're going to be pumping out even more production in every one of its cities. It is very bad, and this is going to be a slippery slope unless all of the other major powers chip away at them. This is not good. It is worth remembering that Vietnam also holds the southern end of the Indian subcontinent, and these cities are also being heavily bombarded by the Boers. A single Boer robot infantry has landed near Trincomalee, but Vietnamese forces are there to flip it if need be. Autocracy is voted world ideology, which is unsurprising given its omnipresence in domination AI games. Inglefur's weakened military and scoreboard of capitals have attracted Kruger's attention, and plans are at least being considered by Skynet's algorithms. The main obstacle right now looks to be Brazilian vacationers who have reached as far as Paris. Brazilian units have started to fill the outback too. Christ, they're everywhere. They're like an infestation. Park's carpet certainly has a lot more holes than it used to, further proving how much of its resources have been committed to the war effort. All in favor of designating Brazil the Zerg, say aye. Gustavus Adolphus, in his temper, throws darts at a board of potential military targets for Sweden's big comeback. He hasn't updated it in a while, though, and Texas is just a Lone Star battleship at this point. Also, spot the Maui. Sri Lanka continues to not want to be seen, building units capable of hiding underwater. Parakramabahu just wants to survive to the end under the radar. Yeah, I said that one right, I think. It sounds good anyway. And honestly, I can't blame him. He's gotta hide. He's gotta stay hidden. Keep his head down. Blackfoot Honolulu's building paratroopers. Of note is the fact that the Blackfoot have the tech for some futuristic units like biotroopers, but seem to be building a lot of cheaper, older units anyway. Maybe one day when they finally tack up, they'll upgrade all of them and dominate the globe. Phu Jan Ha has flipped again, and the remaining Vietnamese forces in the area are scattered and weak. The Boer presence in the area is a bit lacking too, but they should have the region on lockdown. Trincomalee did indeed flip, but the nearest Boer melee unit in this shot is all the way in Basra, meaning further damage to the area is unlikely for the moment. You can spot it in the top right of the screen if you were curious. Tianjin is Vietnamese once again, and the Australian presence looks a little thin. Is Crowfoot and Jandamara's interference paying off? Than Hao even looks flippable. Parks isn't giving up though, and manages to squeeze enough units through to flip the Cham coast again. Vietnamese troops are already en route to flip them back. No, this isn't the end of the episode again, and no, your eyes aren't lying to you. That is indeed Brazil topping the military charts, substantially ahead of the usual frontrunners. Clearly, Pedro's plan to carpet everywhere that will give him open borders is paying off in spades, and his military capabilities are quite intimidating. The question then becomes, what is Pedro planning on using his military for? Thaili B9 flips to the first Australian advanced destroyer I've seen in a while, although it won't hold. Let's be real, these cities are going to flip back and forth for a long time until one of them gives a final death blow. I wouldn't be surprised to see these cities nuked off of the planet, but we shall have to wait and find out. A scorched pile of rubble is all that's left of Kandahar, once home of two world wonders. The Kremlin, the Taj Mahal, and thousands of years of history are destroyed in a nuclear strike. It looks as though the Trungs have taken a page from Henry Morgan's playbook. Against an enemy as powerful as the Boers, scorched earth tactics may be the only thing that can slow them down. Wait, does that mean that those world wonders are gone for good? That is an interesting turn of events, because the Kremlin was providing plus 15% defense. Oh boy, that would be a good blow to them. Let's see if Agra's next on that list. For every city destroyed, though, a new one can be built. The Boers have established Silkok Itzimik on the Horn of Africa, and it's likely that the new holes in the map will be filled before long. Kinky. Today, the Indus Valley may be scarred by radiation and death, but someday it will be rebuilt. And now for the actual stat time. Sorry guys, it's the end of the road. Stat time. The Boers Green Sahara project has paid off with plentiful food supplies as they are consuming their fair share of food. Australia continues to hold the most territory, but Kruger is catching up. A look at the religion stats show how rapidly Arianism and Catholicism have spread. Leonidas the 14th Malik cries from beyond the grave at dodecatheism and its failure to catch on. And here's our religion map. With that, so long. This has been user 1760S, or 1760s, signing out. And my name is Dawkinzz. Thank you for joining me for this version of the audio narration. I really appreciate you coming around, and we'll see you next time.